revelation that is incorruptible. From the other side of terror to behold, annihilation will be unavoidable. Every broken enemy will know that their opponent that they'll be invincible. Take a last look around while you're alive. I'm an indestructible master of war.
Anton Chigurh's past is shrouded so deep in mystery that his name is quite possibly the closest clue we have as to any of his backstory, with his criminal record, ethnicity, and even DNA not being catalogued in the lore of his world. The earliest established lore we have for Anton is during the course of No Country for Old Men, in which he is a professional hitman, with his latest target being Llewellyn Moss, a seemingly random man who by chance managed to get a hold of a briefcase containing $2.5 million. Over the course of this cat-and-mouse chase, Anton travels across most of Texas in his hunt for Llewellyn, blending in with the public and killing whoever it takes to get him closer to his goal. Eventually, Anton confronts a fellow bounty hunter by the name of Carson Wells, catching him by surprise and disposing of him with little effort. After this, Anton intercepts a phone call between Wells and Moss, where he offers to spare Moss's wife in exchange for the money. Llewellyn, driven by a mix of ego and fear, refuses the deal and vows to kill Anton. Despite this, Llewellyn would later be gunned down by hitmen in pursuit of the money, but the desperate man would manage to stash the briefcase away before his death. Unfortunately for Llewellyn, his efforts would be in vain, as Anton would track down the money, find Moss's now widowed wife, and though not confirmed, he is highly implied to have killed her. With his target eliminated and money secured, Anton would soon after be involved in a serious car accident which would leave him severely injured. Before the police can arrive, however, two boys discover Anton, and the hitman offers the two $100 in exchange for their silence, and a shirt for him to use as a sling for his injured arm. After this, Anton would calmly flee the scene of the crash, having gotten away with his violent spree and seemingly vanishing from the grasp of all authorities. Growing up in rural Australia with his parents and sister, Mick Taylor's childhood consisted of frequent abuse from his father. The mixture of abuse and witnessing his father at work slaughtering animals set something off in Mick at a very young age, giving him a natural perverted curiosity towards violence. One day, while out with his sister, a man approached the two children and offered them candy. Mick, being untrusting of the stranger, demanded that he and his sister leave immediately. His sister refused and caused Mick to become aggressive, pushing her off a steep fall to her death. Realizing what he had done, Mick fled to his father and lied about what had happened, blaming the stranger for the death of his sister, causing Mick's father to hunt down and murder the stranger. After this, Mick's father would begin to grow suspicious of his son's alibi, and with Mick realizing that his lie was up, he fled home and scavenged in the rural outback. Eventually, Mick would return home to kill both of his parents, blaming the same man from before for their deaths. After the death of his parents, Mick would be sent from camps to ranches in attempts of housing, only for him to be kicked out each time for his violent tendencies towards his peers. Eventually, he found himself working at a ranch which housed many other violent killers, all of whom he eventually killed, along with a woman he had manipulated into being his girlfriend and various police officers. After this spree of bloodshed, Mick enlisted in the Australian Army to fight in Vietnam. During his time in Vietnam, Mick underwent a long spree of killing, violating, and abusing towards enemies of war and his fellow soldiers. Eventually, Mick went AWOL and returned home, creating a makeshift home out of an old mine owned by one of the killers on the ranch. During this time, Mick saw the ghosts of his war buddies, who told him that the mine had been used for human sacrifices, and that otherworldly spirits would give him supernatural powers if he killed people there. AKA, an upbringing of constant violence and a tour of Nam had bro fucking tweaking out of his mind, my god. A few months later, Mick had a run-in with his favourite group of people, tourists. This led to a violent spree which involved the killing of 18 innocent people, the wearing of a woman's skin, and arson. After this, Mick went through the motions of setting up camp elsewhere, leading to the events of Wolf Creek 1 and 2, where Mick goes through the motions of cutting down the tourist population, body by body. After continuing his killing spree for many years, a surviving victim of his attacks vows revenge and eventually tracks Mick down, confronting him in his home and apparently killing him once and for all, impaling him multiple times and burning the house his body was left in. However, after checking the charred remains of the house the next day, Mick's corpse was nowhere to be found, making his true fate ultimately unknown. Howdy everyone, I'm the Soulless Spartan, here to bring you my very first episode of Versus Vortex, where today we'll be pitting Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men up against Mick Taylor from the Wolf Creek franchise, to see which one of these unrelenting killers would win in a fight. Now, one thing to note before we begin, I will be using both the movie and book adaptation of No Country for Old Men as my source, as while both genuinely follow the same plot, the book helps to provide greater detail and context behind Anton's actions, but via the written detail. And as for Mick, I'll be using all media under the Wolf Creek franchise as my source. This includes both movies, the miniseries, and the books detailing his backstory. Alright, well with all that being said, let's begin by comparing these two physically.
Get away from her! No!
Now, Lizzie, a rifle in the wrong hands can be, really dangerous, so get off, fucking!
While no official statistics have been given for Anton, going by statements from the novel along with analysing his actor, it can be assumed that Anton Chigurh would be in his mid to late 30s. Using his actor Javier Bardem as a point of reference, Anton Chigurh would stand at a height of 5'11" with an athletic yet slightly stocky build, making him well suited to the physical side of his particular line of work. Though rarely demonstrated, Anton is shown to be quite strong in hand-to-hand confrontations, as he was able to overpower and kill a trained police officer with his hands cuffed. While not superhuman, his speed is quite amazing by human standards, as he is regularly shown overcoming multiple armed assailants in gunfights. He is also shown to kill 2 trained hitmen in rapid succession, with the books detailing how he was able to do such a thing before either man could even draw their own gun. He is also later shown to clear an entire motel room of armed hitmen single-handedly, reacting and acting fast enough to outgun those who have him otherwise dead to rights. His endurance is possibly his greatest attribute, however, as he has been shown to be able to walk off life-threatening gunshot wounds while remaining completely calm and precise enough to properly medicate his own wounds. He is also stated to be able to downright ignore excruciating pain, as shown right after the car crash which left him with a broken arm and several fractured ribs, and yet he was still focused and calm. In general, Anton's physicality specializes in being highly resistant and quick enough in combat to take on multiple attackers at once, making him well suited for his role as an assassin. During the events of Wolf Creek 2, Mick Taylor is a man in his early 60s. Using his actor John Jarratt as a reference, we can estimate that Mick Taylor stands at roughly 6 foot in height with a slightly athletic build. As shown frequently throughout the Wolf Creek films, Mick is able to overpower his victims with great ferocity, oftentimes beating them into unconsciousness or even death with just his bare hands.
His mouth's got him in trouble now, eh?
Though it should be noticed that he mainly attacks defenseless people, and can be overpowered by those who choose to fight back. Despite his age, Mick is shown to be quick enough on his feet to chase down escaping victims, making him at least average in comparison to human standards. Durability is where Mick shines, however, as he has survived being shot in the neck, powered for a beating from one of his victims, got up almost immediately after a head injury that allegedly cracked his skull, and even survived being impaled 3 times, and still held on to enough strength to escape from the burning building he was trapped in. His stamina is also quite impressive, as Mick has been shown to pursue his victims for days at a time, refusing to let up or slow down in his pursuit. Overall, while Mick is clearly past his physical prime in terms of his strength and agility, his endurance and unwavering stamina still make him a deadly threat nonetheless. Well, while this category was close in some regards, I'd say it's pretty obvious who has the upper hand in this scenario. While Mick has impressive determination and endurance, Anton simply matches or outclasses him in every regard. In terms of strength, Mick is shown to struggle against regular unprepared victims, while Anton is able to easily and effectively overpower trained police officers. Speed is a bit of a no-brainer as well, as Anton being able to shoot and evade multiple trained gunmen is leagues above anything which Mick has displayed. Durability is where things get tricky though, as both have survived life-threatening injuries and still continue to fight on through their wounds. And while Mick has debatably gone through worse injuries and continued to press onwards, Anton has showings which suggest that he is capable of the same, but instead chooses to mend his injuries before they reach the severity of Mick's, which is less of an anti-feat and more of a showing of self-preservation. And as such, I'll be giving Anton the edge in physical abilities.
Would you hold still, please?
To keep things accurate and simple, I've decided to limit these two strictly to the weapons they are shown using in their respective media. I would also like to point out that my information primarily comes from both the context given in the source material along with the Internet Movie Firearm database, so apologies if I get any information incorrect. As explained in the novel, Anton Chigurh carries a Glock 19, which is primarily used in both law enforcement and home defense situations. It fires 9mm Luger rounds and is effective at up to 150 feet. While its magazine capacity can be customized, we're going to assume it is a basic firearm without attachments, which would allow it to hold up to 15 rounds at a time. Anton also carries a suppressed Tech 9, a firearm which was directly inspired and modeled around military pistols, which fires 9mm rounds and is effective at ranges of up to 160 feet. It should be noted that Anton was only shown using this firearm during one shootout and never again, which shows that he may be hesitant to use it in a one-on-one encounter. Anton's most recognizable firearm comes in the form of the Remington 1187, which is a semi-automatic shotgun, with a short barrel and custom suppressor attached. The shotgun's unique gas operating system allows reduced recoil and compatibility with both 12 gauge and 20 gauge ammunition, allowing for a steadier shot and greater versatility. The Remington has an effective range of roughly 100 feet, and holds around 4 to 5 rounds before needing to be reloaded. Mick's primary weapon is the Remington 700, used primarily by Marines during the Vietnam War, which likely explains how he came to own it. It is a rifle which primarily uses 3.8 Winchester cartridges, carries up to 5 rounds before needing to be reloaded, and has an effective firing range of around 1,500 feet. While not shown much, Mick is also seen using a double-barrel shotgun, and though the details are too hard to make clear, we can still analyze the weapon and its capabilities. This gun is primarily used for hunting, and uses primarily 12 and 20 gauge shells. It is effective at ranges of just under 200 feet and carries up to 2 shots before needing to be reloaded. It should also be noted that despite its power, this weapon's incredible recoil and limited ammo capacity mean that it is only truly effective when used properly, as irresponsible use can be just as much of a detriment to the user as it would be to the user's target. Mick also carries a melee weapon in the form of a standard Bowie knife, a hunting blade used primarily for skinning animals. The average Bowie knife possesses an 8.5 inch long blade with a 5 inch handle, giving the blade a total length of around 13.5 inches. Well, given the arsenals these two bring to the table, I'd say we're up for a pretty interesting debate. Getting the obvious out of the way, Anton has a slight versatility advantage, as he simply brings more ranged weapons to the table. Though Mick does hold his own advantage by default, as him being the only one of the two to carry a blade gives him a close quarters advantage. As for where they match each other, Anton's Remington 1187 has a greater ammo capacity by around 2 to 3 rounds, while Mick's double-barrel shotgun possesses close to double the effective firing range. This is honestly a toss-up in my opinion, as both have their benefits in any given scenario. Though if I had to choose a slight edge, I'd have to say Anton's firearm will be the more useful. While Mick's extra range is good, I don't see it playing that big of a role. Due to the situational nature of the shotgun as a whole, there wouldn't really be a scenario where the range advantage would play a factor, as both shotguns would more than likely be in close enough proximity to be effective for them to be used to begin with. Furthermore, the reduced recoil on Anton's shotgun makes Mick's look like a joke by comparison. The double-barrel shotgun is already known for its crazy recoil. Matching it up against a similar gun designed for reduced recoil isn't even a debate. In terms of close quarters, while Anton may be hesitant to use a room-clearing firearm such as the Tech 9 in a one-on-one encounter, having that at all is already a major edge over an opponent who doesn't have an equivalent weapon. Where Mick really takes the cake however is his Remington 700, which completely blows every other weapon's range out of the water. The range of this weapon and Mick's skill with it means that he's going to have a big advantage to start off with. If he's at a significant distance from Anton, then he's going to be able to snipe at Anton as he pleases, while Anton's going to be left with little to no means of attacking back. If given the right opportunity, Mick could potentially end the fight before it even really starts. I'm gonna be honest, this alone is a major edge in my opinion, enough for me to give Mick the edge in this category. While Anton possesses greater versatility and superior close to mid-range firepower, Mick's long-range capabilities means that he's going to have a significant advantage at the beginning of this fight. Also, while it doesn't really make much of a difference, I would give the slight advantage in armor to Anton, as his clothing material would protect better against minor cuts and scrapes compared to Mick's. But to be real, it doesn't really matter.
Wind them up, let them go.
It only comes with the profession for Anton to be extremely accurate and skilled with firearms, as shown by him killing multiple armed assailants in rapid succession, surviving shootouts against other assassins, and clearing entire buildings of armed men. Though we have no way of knowing any hand-to-hand capabilities for Anton, it's fair to assume that he would have to have some form of training due to the nature of his job. Surprisingly, the best showings of Anton's tactics comes from moments outside of battle. He's shown skillfully tending to fatal wounds multiple times, showing he possesses both the medical knowledge and skill necessary to mitigate damage his body endures, which could prove useful if given the opportunity. He also displays great intelligence in terms of preparation, as seen in both the movie and the book of No Country for Old Men. Anton tracks down his target to a hotel room, rents a room of the exact same build, studies the room top to bottom to learn the layout and possible advantages, light switches, walls weak enough to shoot through, etc. Then removes his shoes to silence his movements and uses his acquired knowledge to clear the entire group in the room of his target, all in rapid succession and without being shot once. This shows that Anton has a specialty towards analysing his environment, and knowing how to use said environment to his advantage, which could prove to be a major advantage in this fight. As a former soldier, it is likely that Mick would have been trained in some form of combat. Though we have little to no information regarding typical hand-to-hand combat, we are shown that his time in the war helped Mick develop a deep sadistic cruelty in combat, often choosing to torture his enemies as opposed to simply killing them as quick and easily as possible. Through the course of the Wolf Creek films, Mick is also shown to have a good sense for tracking his prey, being able to stalk his victims for days at a time without stopping or losing track. Where Mick's skill really shines, however, is with his rifle. In the beginning of Wolf Creek 2, Mick is shown landing a shot on a police officer while in the car, after having already driven a solid mile away. Mick performs shots of similar variety throughout the Wolf Creek films, showing him to be an extremely skilled and therefore dangerous sniper. Now, we've got a bit to look at here, so I'm going to try and explain this as easily as I can. While both aren't given many showings for hand-to-hand capabilities, evidence we are given points to them being about even. Both are heavily implied to be skilled in close quarters combat. It simply isn't specified or shown. Mick holds a major advantage in terms of far distant capabilities, as shown by his skills as a sniper. Simply put, if Mick is given the opportunity, aka if he's at a distance, then he could easily end the fight right there and then with a well-placed shot. And his already established tracking skills means that once he's focused on Anton, he's not going to lose track of him, meaning that Anton will be a sitting duck for Mick to fire at as he pleases. Fortunately for Anton, his skills in analysis and medical knowledge would provide somewhat of a counter to this, as he is shown to be experienced in shootout situations and has proven himself capable of escaping said situations with his life intact. To be put frankly, Anton isn't an idiot. He wouldn't allow his position to be compromised to the point where he could be easily sniped. He is most likely going to use cover to his advantage or find somewhere to gain a better position in order to regain an advantage. Plus, in the scenario that he is shot, he has the knowledge to at worst mitigate the damage and get right back into the fight. And so, with all the factors at play, I'll be declaring this category a draw, as both have their advantages and counters to one another.
You know what date is on this coin?
No.
1958. It's been traveling 22 years to get here. And now it's here. And it's either heads or tails. And you have to say, call it.
Let's set up this fight. Let's say that one way or another, Llewellyn Moss's escapades have led to him fleeing the country altogether, choosing to take refuge in the country of Australia, with Anton as always right on his trail. Hitching out to the outback proved to be an easier task than Llewellyn had expected. Getting through security with a briefcase containing millions proved shockingly simple, and the long flight allowed him some brief rest from the constant anxiety of being on the run. Though he did feel some worry, as he knew that this plan would never have gone through had his wife been informed. He knew that she'd likely kill him if she found out, if no one else got to him first, or got to her. But enough of that. What Llewellyn had to focus on now wasn't where he had come from, but where he was going to go now. Trekking the Australian roads proved to once again be easier than expected. Llewellyn had no prior knowledge of the change in hemisphere, thus was surprised by the change in season. Though scorching summers were rampant back home, the Aussie weather presented a cool, breezy winter. Fine weather to be hiking in. First, his escape was practically handed to him, and he finds himself welcome in his new environment. It appears that perhaps Llewellyn's luck was beginning to turn. And speaking of luck, the sound of kicking gravel alerted Llewellyn to a car travelling along the road a ways behind him. Maybe he could further his escape by hitchhiking with a hopefully kind driver. As Mick drove down the vast expanse of road, he caught sight of a figure far off in the distance. In all of his years, he'd never seen a person attempting to walk along the outback plains. Well, nobody who was in their right mind at least. Slowing his travel slightly to study the man, Mick took in the finer details of who he was looking at. What Mick saw was a man looking to be in his mid-30s, dressed in a white flannel shirt and jeans, lugging a strange briefcase alongside him. Now, the case in question was of no concern to Mick, but the appearance of the man was certainly up for question. Mick, seeing a strange man with a briefcase and no sense of fashion for the environment he walked, made the one natural assumption: tourist. This was going to be fun. As he approached, the man turned to face the car and held out a hand to get Mick's attention. Mick chuckled to himself as he saw the stranger asking for a ride. It's like he didn't even have to try anymore. The tourists practically trapped themselves. As he pulled up beside the stranger, Mick rolled down his passenger side window to address him. "Well, what the bloody hell are you doing out here, mate?" Llewellyn chuckled slightly as he leant against the open window. He had heard the twang of the occasional Australian on TV, but he had never experienced their way of speaking in person before. "Howdy, I'm looking to get a ways away from here," Llewellyn said, cutting right to the chase. "Well, you ain't gonna get much of anywhere out here on foot, mate." Mick unlocked the passenger side door as he spoke. "Come on, I'll give you a lift." Llewellyn smiled as he opened the door and stepped inside the beat-up car, setting the briefcase at his feet on the car floor before the two drove off, striking up a conversation as they got a move on. For the first time in a while, Llewellyn relaxed as he finally felt somewhat safe again. His luck really did seem to be turning for the better, for the moment at least. After all, ignorance is bliss, and Llewellyn was nothing but ignorant towards the presence of another driver approaching from a fair distance behind them. Anton kept his eyes focused on the road as he drove down the outback, wide stretches of dirt and cement that spanned on as far as the hunter could see. He hadn't been on the road long. He had gotten off the boat that morning, and had acquired a shitty little police cruiser by around lunchtime. Now it was the middle of the afternoon, and he was already out on the country road, in search for his prey. It was only after an hour or two into his drive while driving at the peak of the hill that he finally caught sight of what he was looking for. Far off in the distance, a few miles at least, sat two figures, one of a man and one of a car. The man unmistakable to Anton, even at such a distance. As he drove, Anton watched as Llewellyn conversed with the car's driver for a moment before stepping inside, the two making their way down the road together as Anton spied from a distance, like a wolf. Anton's foot pressed down on the accelerator, steadying his pace ever so slightly as he came barreling down the hill. Finally, upon hitting flat road, Anton's foot pressed down harder, clocking at least 30 over the speed limit, more than enough to eventually catch up with his target. The car started out as merely a tiny blip off in the distance to Anton. Then, after a minute or two, he could make out the general shape of the car. Another few minutes and he could make out the finer details. As he approached, Anton flicked the car's siren and lights on, signaling for the driver ahead of him to pull over. "Ah, what the?" Mick said under his breath as the cop car from behind tailed him. To his knowledge, Mick had no reason to be getting pulled over. He was going the legal speed and wasn't out doing anything illegal. Yet. Regardless, he began to slow the car down, allowing the cop car tailing from behind to catch up and stop its chase. As if Mick was done seeing out-of-touch dresses today, the man he saw from the rearview mirror looked somehow even more out of place than the one sitting in his passenger seat. Speaking of said passenger, Llewellyn made the mistake of looking at the car behind him, meeting the gaze of his pursuer staring daggers at him as he gained speed. "You know this guy, mate?" Mick asked, noticing Llewellyn's distress. Moss, properly shitting bricks, struggling with his words for a few seconds before muttering something else. "Keep driving." "What?" Mick asked, turning his head to Llewellyn. "Just keep driving," Moss said, louder this time, though still too late. Mick just barely managed to turn his head back, managing to catch a split second of the cop car speeding towards him. The collision caused Mick's car to spin uncontrollably, drifting wildly before making a stop in a ditch on the side of the road. Mick reeled in his seat from the impact, clutching his gut as he gained his bearings. Looking over to the passenger seat, Mick was enraged to see his soon-to-be victim missing, the car door wide open and Llewellyn already making a run for it. Growling through gritted teeth, Mick flung his door open and grabbed his rifle from the back seat. Before he could take aim at Llewellyn, he heard a car door slam from behind him. Turning around, and Mick watched Anton step out from the car, movements slow and deliberate, as if he were working autonomously. Now about his victim and with some psychotic freak on his ass, Mick turned his attention from Moss to Anton. Mick held the rifle at his side, taking a moment to size up his opponent, Anton doing the same as he cautiously approached. Wasting no time, Mick leveled the rifle as Anton retrieved the Glock 19 from his belt, both men drawing upon each other at the same time. Both fired almost simultaneously, moving frantically to avoid the other's shot. Anton was lucky enough to dodge the shot, ducking to the side as the bullet slammed through the back of the car behind him. Mick, on the other hand, was clear of the pistol's fire, leaving him free to line up another shot. Anton wasted no time in getting behind cover, retreating behind the police car mere moments before another shot sped past him. Now out of sight, Anton would keep note of the time between Mick's shots, getting a good frame of reference for the window he had between loading shots. A third shot from the rifle hit the car, blasting the front and back windscreen in one go. 2 seconds. That's all Anton had to work with. As soon as his brain registered that the shot had been fired, he rose from his hiding spot and fired at his assailant, missing 3 shots before finally managing to land one, clipping Mick in the leg. The Outback Killer dropped to one knee upon being hit. The bullet, though only managing to graze him, still hurt like a bitch regardless. Seeing his opening, Anton continued to pelt the downed man with bullets, Mick in a panic deciding to take notes from his opponent's book and retreat. Mick hobbled over to his car, retreating into the ditch and managing to make it relatively unscathed. Anton had managed to exhaust the magazine, needing a moment to reload. In the few seconds where Anton was distracted, Mick was already on the offense, lining up a shot beneath the police car. Just as Anton's pistol was ready to go again, searing pain shot through his leg, the shot managing to completely pass through his leg and out the other side. Falling to the ground, Anton barely managed to pull himself together enough to roll forwards and out of the way of a shot which would have damn near taken the top of his head off. Mick, now being the one to run his ammo dry, ducked back into cover, reaching into the open back door of his car and retrieving his double-barreled shotgun nestled in the trunk. With his good leg, Anton brought himself up, limping towards his vehicle of choice and getting into the driver's seat. Having reloaded at this point, Mick peeked out from his hiding spot to find no sign of his target, Anton having completely left his field of view. Now more frustrated than before, Mick stepped out from cover to berate his pursuer. "Come on out, you bloody!" Before he could even finish that sentence, the police car roared to life before immediately making a move, reversing towards Mick in haste. Too focused on the hunt to even think about getting out of the way, Mick readied his gun as fast as he could, his aim as steady as it could be with a car barreling towards him. The car approached and Mick's finger pressing down on the trigger, the screeching of tires was interjected with a loud Taking his foot off the accelerator, Anton grit his teeth through an iron grip to contain the pain which shot through his body. Thankfully, his gamble had managed to pay off, the car managing to slam into Mick dead on, sending the older man right to the ground with enough force to crack several ribs, the Aussie howling in pain, struggling on his back as pain weighed him down heavier than he ever knew previously. Anton, seeing his window of opportunity, opened the car door and attempted to get out of the car, tripping halfway out and falling to his knees as pain coursed through him. Though the ditch ever had proved to be successful, it also left Anton with a sizable wound in his left shoulder, the blood seeping through all layers of his clothing, the blue sleeve of his jacket now stained an oily brownish red. The hitman forced himself to his feet, reaching back into the car and grabbing the duffel bag in the passenger seat. Fortunately for Anton, the fight had managed to break out close to a gas station, just over 100 feet from where the two were situated. Seeing an opportunity to hide away and recover, Anton made his way towards the building, moving as fast as one could with 2 thumb-sized holes in the body and about a pint of blood missing. Stumbling close enough to make out the details of the shop, Anton quickened his pace, only a few dozen feet away before hearing another shot ring out, landing on the ground mere feet away from where he was. Turning back briefly, Anton saw Mick back on his feet, rifle in hand and more so pissed off as opposed to being dead. Turning back around and making a beeline for the store, Anton managed to avoid 2 more shots, the first of which hit the wall of the store, and the second of which managed to clip a gas pump outside the store. Barging his way in, Anton immediately made a break for the supply aisle, ignoring the panicking cashier. The hitman grabbed several items off the shelf, mainly bandages and gauze, all the while the cashier continued to berate him. Before he could even begin to process what the panicked shopkeeper was saying, a 5th and final gunshot rang out, followed by the sound of shattering glass and a heavy thump against a cold counter. Anton took no time to grieve the fallen man, immediately making his way to the back of the store, leaning tightly against the wall beside the doorframe before getting to work on his wounds. He carefully released his sore arms from his jacket, allowing it to drop to the floor as pain shot through his contorted limbs. His shoulder looked bad, several gnarly holes of flesh visible even through his shirt. Anton unrolled a few sheets of the bandages and ripped the gauze pack open with his teeth, placing the gauze over the wound in his shoulder before carefully yet swiftly wrapping it with the bandages. He raised his arm as to wrap the bandages from the length of his shoulder close to his neck and around his armpit, covering the wound while still prioritizing mobility of the limb. When the wrapping was tight, he turned his attention to his bloodied leg, which had managed to drip a noticeable puddle of red upon the tile flooring where he stood. Kneeling upon his limb, Anton rolled up his pant leg before repeating the process of applying gauze and bandages, wrapping around the length of his ankle and tucking the covering beneath his now unrolled pants. Given not a moment longer to think or even breathe, Anton heard the door to the shop violently swing open. Mick stepped into the shop, toting his rifle in hand as he scanned the area. His eyes darted across the store as he slowly covered the aisles, determined to hunt down his new prey. Satisfied with his search, Mick then made his way over to the counter, finding it also bare, besides the dead cashier, of course. The entire front of the shop checked and no one to be found. Mick slowly made his way over towards the back door. His steps were light and nimble, his movements leaving no sound as he edged closer and closer to where he presumed his target to be. With a deep breath and an itchy trigger finger, Mick turned the corner, taking the first sight in front of him as a sign to pull back the trigger. The corpse fell forward, leaning up against the closed bathroom door. Their splattered brains trickled down the door, the body itself following as it awkwardly slumped upon itself. Mick, not yet satisfied, stepped towards the body. It wore the same jacket as his would-be assassin. The lack of an upper head would make it impossible to tell if the corpse had the same odd haircut. Prodding the body, Mick let out a chuckle at his handiwork, satisfied with a well-placed shot. And with that, Mick looked up from the body, ready to leave and go about his day. The second Mick dared to let his guard down, it came to bite him in the neck, almost quite literally. Before he even had time to finish laughing, he found his vocal cords strained as rough hands enveloped his neck. Anton, now on the offensive, held an iron grip on Mick's throat as the older men thrashed in a panic. The two men flailed uncontrollably, Anton attempting to silence Mick and Mick trying with all of his might to escape. In a dance of aggression similar to a bull rider and their animal, the two struggle brought them all about the shop, initially tumbling backwards into the tool shed Anton had likely been hiding in, then out into the general store. Eventually, Mick had managed to successfully kick Chigurh off of him, the hitman stumbling against the wall of coolers hard enough to shatter one of the glass panels, with Mick retreating to the furthest opposing wall. The two now face to face, mere feet apart with no firearms to hide behind, prepared for the moment that would both believe could be their last. Mick acted first, rushing towards Anton with a ferocity intent on surviving. As Mick tackled Anton, the two went tumbling, stray glass from the freezers embedding into both men, though only enough to further spark their already strong adrenaline. Mike striked him Anton in the face, only able to swing two good blows before a sharp stabbing pain ripped through his punching arm. Though Mick had been quicker to act, Anton had managed to grab a lengthy shard of glass before falling, that stray glass now rendering Mick's right arm completely out of commission. Crack! Chigurh headbutted Mick, bringing the two apart as Taylor was sent reeling back. Anton swiftly rose to his feet, gritting his teeth as the pain in his body which burnt like fresh coals. Mick rose also, his head spinning as he felt the injuries of the fight finally beginning to get to him. Barely seeing straight, yet still focused on ending this scuffle, Mick used his weak arm to motion for the assassin to approach. "You think that's a knife?" Anton simply exhaled tiredly at the killer's quip, staring intently, yet without any clear emotion. With a fluidity unusual for a man in his condition, Anton slowly approached, his arm raised in another attempted grab at Mick's throat. The grab would prove unsuccessful, however, as Mick's strong arm would act just in time to counteract. Too fast for Anton to even process, or perhaps his senses were just too numb to bear any further pain, Anton's bad arm was pierced with a large Bowie knife, the blade piercing the fabric of his shirt, his skin, and digging into the bone, causing Anton to let out a rare panicked growl of agony. "That is a knife!" Mick laughed as he dug the blade deeper. Though the piercing of his arm left him down a limb, Anton was betting on this outcome being the case, as he knew that one strong arm is all he'd need. In a swift movement that betrayed the sluggishness from before, Anton yanked Mick's strong arm, painfully tearing the knife from his bicep. Such pain would only fuel Anton's animosity as he pulled Mick into a chokehold. Having dropped the knife in the sudden rush, Mick could do nothing but struggle as Anton closed off his airflow. Once again, the two flailed, this time with a desperation only seen in wild beasts desperate for their lives. The two bashed against the aisles, shelves toppling as they fought, eventually them two reaching the ground. For the first time in his vast life, Mick felt the closest thing to the fear of God, and he fought tooth and nail to evade it. Anton's iron grip wavered only slightly as Mick bit into his forearm, the aged teeth causing tears in the flesh that left both Anton's hand and his own mouth covered in blood. Even through the pain, Anton couldn't help but smile, his eyes lucid as he gritted his teeth in a pained grin of enjoyment. Mick's hands squirmed as they reached for anything to save him from his fate, finally reaching the handle of his knife. In a last moment of desperation, Mick used the last of his strength to send the knife into Anton, the full length of the blade ripping into Chigurh's abdomen. At that moment, the two were silent. Mick lacked the strength to vocalize, and Anton's sharp gut punch had taken the wind out of him. Both were still, not moving from the floor for several seconds, a rare silence filling the store. In the end, however, Mick's body shifted, as Anton pushed it off of his own, struggling against the nearby countertop to prop himself up to his feet. Chigurh took a moment to gain his bearings, the world spinning as he stood, his surroundings an even blurrier mess than how they actually appeared. Careful with his steps, Anton slowly made his way over to the back door, reaching down to grab his jacket, thankfully mostly unharmed from the dead customer he had used for a distraction. He then turned back around, eyeing the large supply closet he had previously hidden in, but more importantly, eyeing the cattle gun which had been strewn out from the cabinet in the struggle. Anton grabbed the bolt pistol before stumbling back out into the main area. He then scanned over the debris, picking up several packages of medical supplies and placing them into a plain shopping bag, mainly tools such as antibacterials and bandages. He would surely need them. Though Anton knew his assailant was alive, he paid the man no mind as he browsed the store. It's not like the would-be killer would be going anywhere anyway. Mick, propped up against the countertop, simply eyed Chigurh. He wanted desperately to gut the man like a fish, but his body found no conviction to do so. He didn't know exactly what Anton had done to him, but he found it no use to move anything below his neck, his eyes being the only tool left for him to track his target. Eventually, Anton did turn to Mick, finally approaching the broken man and eyeing him down. Anton lowered his bag and reached into his jacket pocket, retrieving a small quarter from it, stained and slicked from the blood which had enveloped the fabric. Looking Mick in the eyes, Anton flipped the coin, impressively managing to catch it in his left palm, his right holding the bolt gun. He pressed the coin beneath his thumb as he held the end of the bolt gun against Mick's forehead, uttering his first and final words of the confrontation. Call it. Mick, confused, beaten, and knowing deep down that it wouldn't change a thing, responded the only way he knew how. Fuck off, cunt. And with that, I declare Anton Chigurh the winner. Well, this fight turned out to be a much greater headache than I expected. Now, before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of this matchup, I think it's only right to get the easy stuff out of the way first. In all aspects besides possibly durability, Anton had the edge. We've seen Anton outfight, outspeed, and outlast experienced combatants constantly, while Mick manages to get contended with and even sometimes get outdone by average everyday people, who are often even off guard when he attacks them. Durability is only debatable because we see Mick take more punishment, and that's only because he gets outdone enough to be injured to that extent, while Anton goes the majority of his story unscathed because of how skilled he is. Speaking of skill, the two do manage to even out each other in that department. Mick has been shown to possess far greater experience due to him participating in a war, along with his older age meaning that he's had more time to hone his craft. Anton, on the other hand, displays far greater strategy and general knowledge than Mick does, making choices that completely shift the field of battle into his favour, and possessing knowledge which has saved him from life or death scenarios more than once. In short, Mick has fought and killed for longer, while Anton fights and kills more efficiently. As for weapons, both edge out in their own ways, as Anton possesses a better shotgun and an extra range weapon as a whole, while Mick has an option for melee, which would help him make up for the difference in physicality. And that all edges out well and good, and okay, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Mick's biggest advantage in this fight is that Remington 700. As much as I can hype up Anton and list off his feats and best showings, the simple truth is he is no less human than you or I, and a good shot to the head would put him down then and there. And we've seen from showings in both films, Mick's efficiency with his rifle is enough to make even the best of sharpshooters blush. And though Anton's weapons would allow him to also pick his opponent off from a distance, Mick has him beaten range by close to 10 times, meaning that any wrong move at any point could result in Anton being taken out of the fight. Now, you may be wondering, if this is such a crazy advantage, then how come Mick still lost? And that, dear viewer, is because Anton would not allow himself to get picked off. Do not get me wrong, that gun is going to be a major uphill battle for Anton to overcome, but I believe that he has what it takes to overcome those odds more times than not. First off, for as good as a shot as Mick is, due to the nature of his gun, he needs a significant amount of time to line up and take his shots. We see it in all his showings, he often takes a moment to line up his shots before pulling the trigger, all the while his target is either unaware of his presence or not fighting back. Anton, on the other hand, has been shown outshooting multiple targets in rapid succession, targets which are also often trying to kill him, by the way. Furthermore, Anton's displays of strategies such as the motel scene show that Anton is capable of planning for conflict on the spot and formulating counters to whatever he may have to come up against. He's also shown capable of patching up his wounds with the bare essentials for medical aid, which suggests that if push came to shove and Anton got the opportunity, he'd not only be able to avoid Mick's line of fire, but mitigate the lasting damage from any shots he may end up receiving. And while durability may land slightly in Mick's favour, endurance is a far different ballpark. As while Mick has been shown sustaining far worse, Anton has been shown walking off far worse. In confrontations where Mick sustains injuries, he is often overpowered or forced to take a backseat from confrontation to regain his bearings. While on the other hand, we've seen Anton go through fatal punishment again and again, and manage to keep moving forward regardless. The crazy thing about this whole thing is that Mick does have the capabilities to match and even win this fight. He just has so many asterisks alongside all of his best showings. He's able to break people's necks single-handedly, yes, but he only shown doing that against people that are defenseless, even people that don't even see him coming most of the time. Anton, though his feats are slightly less impressive, he's actually doing it against people that could fight back. Mick could headshot him at the start of the fight, but his sadism wouldn't let him do things that easily. The thing about Mick is that he's a really good shot. Like, he could finish this fight before it even begins. But his character would not allow him to do that. His sadism has gotten him in so much trouble in the past. He's lost victims because of that sadism. It even got him killed at the end of the show. And that kind of sadism, that kind of not willing to take the shot immediately kind of mentality isn't going to fare well against a fighter like Anton, who won't take a second chance, who will get the kill the second he gets it guaranteed. Mick does have a knife and could hold his own in hand-to-hand combat, but has been shown getting outdone by regular people in that same scenario. My main example I'll give for this is the beginning of Wolf Creek 2, where one of the first people he attacks in that movie, he takes the dude off guard and stabs him in the back with that massive Bowie knife, and the dude still manages to get up and beat him down. You could argue that only happened because Mick was distracted with the other victim, but that just shows that Mick's personality is going to be his biggest problem in this fight. He is going to get distracted. He can get taken off guard, and that can cost him a lot in a fight. The thing is, Mick has all the tools he needs to win. The problem is he's not going to use those tools in character. He's not going to use them correctly, at least. He's going to try and toy with Anton. He's going to try and make him suffer before he gets the kill. And that is not a very good mindset to go into against a fighter like Anton Chigurh. His efficiency and intelligence are going to be the biggest counters to Mick's whole toolkit. Sure, you can argue that Anton has better physicality and it matches him in some weapon regards, but the way that they both approach combat is going to be what determines the fight ultimately. You could argue that Mick would win 9 times out of 10, or even all the time, if he used his tools correctly. But the problem is, that's not Mick's character. If Mick has to be out of character to win the fight, then it defeats the purpose of the fight being Mick Taylor versus Anton Chigurh. Plus, if Mick can only win while out of character, then it's only fair to let Anton be out of character. AKA, let him camp in a safe spot until Mick is forced to come and fight close ranged. Which, to be fair, is the in-character thing for Anton to do in this kind of fight. Just cements the fact that Mick doesn't win. No matter what way you put it, even though Mick has more than enough methods to win on his own personality is going to be the biggest hindrance in this fight, and I believe it would get in the way just enough for Anton to be able to secure the kill first. Sure, while Mick had a surefire way to win, Anton has the skill and tenacity to overcome it more often than not. And we've seen many times before in the Wolf Creek films, it is possible for Mick to be outdone by his targets, which is precisely what Anton would do. He'd bring the battlefield more into his favour. And once the core advantage has been taken away from Mick, or Mick is forced into a compromising position, it would only be a matter of time before Anton's superior physicality, greater skill, and lethal precision gets the better of the Outback Killer. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if I got anything wrong, feel free to correct me. I've been the Solar Spartan, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah. Also, one quick announcement I'd like to make while I still have your time is I'd like to give a quick shout out to the channels Rain932 and Sky/Hilda. Both have been major inspirations for this channel. I've been watching their content for a while. If it wasn't for their videos, I wouldn't have started this. So I wouldn't probably have the inspiration to start this to begin with. Rain has started uploading again, which is a really good thing. They do really good stuff. And though Hilda doesn't do her Versus series anymore, she still does amazing stuff in the Versus community, so I'd recommend checking her stuff out as well. Both are really talented people, both do really amazing work, and both have been major inspirations to this channel. So if you like what I do, I think you'd like them a lot as well.